Hey everybody, it's Moonbo here. Hope you're having a wonderful day. Coming at you with a different episode of Scrap Mechanic on this lovely weekend. I'm not going to be showing a creation or anything. I'm going to be mainly talking about some ideas for Scrap Mechanic. So I was doing a stream and I asked a bunch of the viewers if they would love to see some type of idea video, because I have a few of them. So I'm going to present to you guys a few different ideas that I think could be pretty useful in the game. Maybe they might not be practical, maybe they aren't even possible, but nonetheless, it's kind of just a fun thing to have a talking point and maybe a little bit of a discussion about Scrap Mechanic and the possibilities in the game. So I'm going to kind of go through 10 of them, but before that, I'm going to kind of get a few of them right out of the way. Alright, so I have a few little representations of a few ideas that I'm sure a lot of people have already had, so I just wanted to point them out because this is not really the focus of this video, pointing out the more obvious things. So obviously one of them would be like lift folders. It'd be really nice to be able to organize these in folders. Of course, everybody would love to see some hinges as well, so maybe one day there might be some hinges in the game, and of course, everyone wants to see pistons, so maybe they'll add some pistons. I mean, we can make our makeshift ones here like this, but to be able to make it directly as a piston with more power would definitely be useful. And of course, this bed here represents a day and night cycle. I would really love to see that. I'm sure it would come with survival, and it would probably be something that you could turn on and off in the sandbox mode. But that's just another thing that people are really looking forward to. And of course, everyone wants to see a whole bunch more of these. But I think we don't want too many necessarily, because they might get a little watered down. But those are just a few of the things that people have already wanted to see. Even water too, actually. Yeah, there's no water yet either. So maybe some water physics with some water would be really cool. Make some interesting, different style of creations. But that's not what these ideas are about. These are just the simpler ones. So we're gonna go through maybe 10 of the ideas that I have come up with, and you guys can let me know what you think down in the comments. I'm gonna try my best to explain them and maybe get my point across. So let's begin. Alright, so my first idea would be something along the lines of a dimmer switch. So I'm not too sure exactly how it could be implemented. What I'm thinking is essentially if you had pieces, let's say we can make a little kind of stand here. So if you had a piece like this and a piece like that, as well as an engine, basically this two switch here, so it'd be two switches, right? Except the two circles would actually be one. So you can probably imagine if you took another switch here and put it in your inventory. So if we were sitting in a chair, you would essentially have two different switches, except they would be wired as one. So if you took this to a seat and connected it to the seat, it would connect as one, but it would take up two hotkeys. And the way it would work essentially is you would take that switch and connect it to suspension, to a light, or to an engine. And so if you press it the up one, so it would be wired in a way so that if the first key would be the up, the second key would be down. And so you could literally just press this button and increase or decrease suspension. You could definitely move it up and down through the light, so you could have like a light dimmer switch. Or of course you could add it to an engine, and you can literally, while driving, press the dimmer switch and increase your speed, and then press the switch back down again and bring the switch back down. Some applications for that, of course, would be more control over the engines. It'd be cool for different light effects as well, and to be able to increase and decrease suspension on the fly would be a very unique thing, based off of weight loads in your creation or perhaps different terrain that you'd be encountering. So just a little idea for the dimmer switch. I got a couple more ideas for switches, and then we're going to try and move on to a few more ideas. So let me set this up for the next idea. Alright, so my next idea for the switches would be something that you call like a toggle switch. Obviously, like I said before, I'm not too sure how these ideas could be implemented in the game, even if they could be. So basically, though, the toggle switch would be something that you would connect to either a controller or something with a slider, such as a light. Similar to the dimmer switch, this one would control various inputs, except not through a sequence of going up and down a slider, but more so creating set points. So essentially, you would be able to have a switch that could have 2 or 3 set points, probably just 2 really, so on, set point 1, and then off. So basically, you would have, like say, if it was a light, you could set your default to 5, and so when you turn the switch on, it'll set it to 5. If you press the switch again, it'll give it a second input. So say you went from 5 to 15, so it would basically be like a dimmer, except you're skipping everything in between. So you press the switch, it'll bump it up to 15, and then if you press it one more time, it'll turn it off. And then so basically you can cycle through 2 different set points every time you switch the button there. So the same could be said for controllers. Obviously I don't have a bearing set up there, so if I like set up a bearing real quick here just to get some numbers on the screen. So if we have a bearing here, you could imagine even like a sequencer inside of a controller. So if you were to press the switch, it would activate, let's say, movement number 1, and then if you activate the switch again, it'll activate movement number 2, let's say, and then if you press it one more time, it'll return it to its original position here. So it's just another way to go through sequences, as well as skipping through like the dimmer switch and being able to change something without actually having to get out and say, okay, I want this light at here. Okay, no, now I want to move it there. And obviously the same could be done for engines and all sorts of other things that you could connect into the switch and set default value points. So it would be like a low gear, high gear, off, or something like that for an engine. So just another idea for a switch, and I have one more thing to say about switches. Obviously there's not much more to say, except it'd be nice if you could have multiple switches and they would all just connect to, let's say, you know, one controller. But we can't do that right now, and I'm not sure if there are limitations on the abilities of the game to, say, take 2 switches and connect them to one controller. Obviously there are logic gates to do that, but this is just something that would be able to get around the logic gate, because you don't necessarily need the logic to be able to switch 2 things on one controller. So that's just little ideas for some switches there. But that's it for switches. We're going to move on to something different. Alright, so this is a strange idea. I guess I would call it something along the lines of like a lift face selector. So that might sound kind of weird, but basically what I'm thinking about here is if you pick up a creation, so let's say this box here that I have 6-sided with some different colors, if I pick that up and put it down, you can see it's red and blue here, and no matter what, when I pick it up, it's always going to be that way. I can spin it and rotate it, which is fine, but I can never really reorientate a creation based off of the lift alone. Now, there is a way you can get around that, of course. So if I were to take this block right here, and we can make a little stand. Now, see, when I take this on the lift and put it, the blue is facing here and the red is facing there. Now, if I were to take this and weld it to this peg right here, and remove that block, now you can see the blue is on the bottom. So if I get rid of these 3 blocks, the lift orientation of this creation has now changed. So you can see the bottom is now on the side, and the top is now on this side here, and the blue is underneath where the lift is. So basically, this idea is basically a way to get around having to weld something down. So obviously the lift tool is selected in my inventory at the moment, so perhaps it could be like a hotkey that you press, and you press the hotkey, and when you take your lift, it'll actually show you. So I can give you like a little example. So you would have like a block like this. So if I had my lift here, I would see that the blue square like that. If I were to slide it up into this corner here, it would move over to this corner. So this would be like a hotkey that you could press, and basically press the hotkey and select it. And what would happen is, when you grab it like this and put it back down on the lift, where you selected it right up here would actually be what is sitting on the lift. So this would be a way to offset the lift. Sometimes you don't want your lift to be exactly in the middle somewhere, and that would be because, say, you're working underneath and there's some stuff going on down here. See, I can't even do it right now, the lift's in the way. And you wanted to keep working on it, you could actually just take your lift selector area and pretty much just pop it down and put it onto the new orientation and keep on building. So, I mean, that's a little bit of a far-stretched idea. Obviously, like I showed you, you can always take it like this and weld it down like so, and there you go, your creation has a new orientation. So what was up is now down. But, I mean, it's just a little quicker way to do that, and it's not truly changing the game so much as making a process like the weld trick a little bit faster. But we are going to move on to something else, pretty simple actually, which would be default block colors. So it'd be really nice if, say, you come into your inventory here like this, and you're mousing over all of the different things, and you could actually maybe press like a button, let's say, and it would bring up like a little hovering menu, and once that hovering menu is there, you could go up and select the different color, and once you have your color selected, the default color for that block, say the tile block, if we wanted it blue, you would see that the tile would just appear blue right away, and in your inventory where you would be selecting it, it would be blue down there as well. And the same could be said for all of these, right? So you could have the rims always white, you could have these pipe pieces always painted black, and it would always just remember that, and you would never have to change it. And obviously if you wanted to change it, you press the hotkey and bring up your menu for the colors, pick the new color, and go with that. So it's just something to make building faster. Nothing too complicated, and remember, these are just hypothetical ideas. They don't have to exist in the game. I'm just kind of having some fun with it. So let's move on to something else. Alright, this idea is something that I've thought of before, and it's not too complicated, but it'd be really nice to have it implemented in the game. Right now, when you take a thruster and connect it to your seat, the only thing that happens to it is it will become the W key. So if I press anything else on my steering, obviously, nothing happens except for when I press the W key, you can see it activates the thruster. But one thing that I would love to see implemented is a way to actually decide what you connect certain things to when it comes to the seat. So obviously you could take your seat and connect it here, but it'd be nice if there was maybe not necessarily two green circles, one for W and one for S. That'd be a little bit too much. But it'd be nice to be able to grab like a secondary menu on a seat, let's say, where you could change what it's connected to. And if you had it like this, you could actually press S and activate it, and press W to activate the other one. So obviously there are W, A, S, and D converters in this game, so this would just be a way to avoid having to put a converter in to achieve a relatively simple task. Nothing too complicated for an idea. Like I said, maybe just a secondary menu that you can access in the thing here, or maybe some type of pop-up menu. When you grab something like this, you could drag it down and a pop-up menu would appear where you could move it and connect it to something different while it's still there. And you might be thinking, well, that could get pretty complicated with a whole bunch of wires, and it kind of leads me into my next idea, which would essentially be like a wire hider, or something like that. So it would basically be that you can isolate different wire sets. So obviously if you had, like, let's say a whole bunch of thrusters here all over the place, and they were all connected, and you had a really hard time seeing what's going on. Now, this is really a bad example, but I mean, I've made some creations, and I'm sure you have as well, where you have so many wires, you don't even know what is happening anymore. So if I were to, say, grab something like a sensor, and I had so many wires here, I can barely see it. Look at this, I can barely see that. Okay, I'm exaggerating here, but you get the point. If I could barely see this because there were so many wires, it'd be nice if I could access a secondary menu on the seat, or whatever it might be. You press it, and it activates the menu, and you can actually go through, let's say, like a list of what is connected to this seat. It'll tell you there are 60 thrusters connected to the seat. There are, you know, obviously how many switches or buttons there would be, how many engines were connected to the seat, and you'd be able to isolate them. So I have so many thrusters, I can't really see what I'm doing. Go into the menu, pick the thrusters, isolate the thruster wires, so that way you would literally see nothing here. Now, obviously, they would still be connected to whatever they were connected to before. It's just they would just be hidden or dimmed down or something to just make them go away. And that way you have your sensor ready to go and you can connect it. Oh, wait, what? The sensors don't connect to seats. Whoops. So another idea of mine is default inventory slots, and they've been doing some progress on the inventory, the developers. But one thing that'd be really cool is, let's say, for example, this is the beautiful splash page of Scrap Mechanic. As you can see, the logo's there. You know, you can do things, but you would actually have the inventory slot here in front of you that you can actually scroll through. And what that would be essentially is, like, it's your inventory that is tied to your account. So if I join any multiplayer game, any server, or my own games, my own maps, whatever I choose, it doesn't matter, the default will be there, and when I load into it, it'll always load. So even if you're playing with your friends or playing on your own, you always get the same inventory no matter what, and everything would be by default, even if you had like colors selected for different things. So I just think that would be a great idea because you never have to really reset your inventory. It's kind of not necessarily tedious, but now that we have the scrolling menus for our inventory, you don't actually really need to plan ahead so much as just get the basics out, right? So it'd be nice to just always have all 3 of these menu sets completely filled up all the time by default, no matter where you go. A pretty cool idea. But we are going to move on to something that's really simple, actually. I am going to get out of that splash page mindset there, and this one, well, it's kind of funny. I mean, it's not a big deal, and this is kind of probably a silly idea to be throwing out in this video, but it's something that has frustrated me, depending on the creation that I'm making, of course. So in this case, I'm just going to show you an example of what I mean. It can be pretty annoying. Let's say you have this on your lift, and you are right here, and it's like, oh yeah, I can put it right here. Well, now see where this spawned? It spawned directly on top of my head. And because the maps, they aren't perfectly flat, when you're walking, sometimes you just get stuck. See, I get stuck, so I have to crouch my way out, which is kind of slow. So why not? I'm not sure, maybe they can... This is, I don't know, tell me what you think about this idea. It's kind of funny, but just 1 block higher. That's all that it needs to be. If you can spawn this on a lift, and it goes overhead, just make it so that it spawns 1 more higher, and I don't have to crouch my way out of every creation. I mean, obviously, I can press the key here to make it go up, and then get out from under the creation, but then I have to take my hand off of my mouse. And you might think that's not much of a big deal, but when you're spending dozens of hours on a single creation, it'd be nice to skip a few of the tedious steps. But nonetheless, a pretty decent idea, something that would probably be pretty simple to put in. But we're gonna move on to something else. Alright, so another idea that I had was for painting creations, or perhaps even spawning new blocks, would be that there'd be a way to either remove or increase the click and drag size. So say I wanted to paint something here, and I click this corner and I drag it out this way. I'm limited to the 16 by 16 block set that is set in the game. Now this is just a general idea, like I was saying before, you know, these aren't to be taken so seriously. But so the 16 by 16, it can be kind of annoying depending on what you're painting. So obviously the default color sets would get around something like this, except you're not always necessarily going to know exactly what color you want to paint something. So you might just use the blank color, but you need to repaint it. So it'd be really nice if you could actually click back here and drag all the way out to right about here, and then voila, your entire board would be painted. So just something to be able to get around having to click and drag many times, so you'd be able to click, drag all the way to over here and paint the entire thing in 1 quick swipe. Like I said though, the default color would get around that, but sometimes you just need that little bit of extra help. So there you have it, guys. It is 10 ideas in Scrap Mechanic. Do you have any ideas for Scrap Mechanic? Then you should definitely put them in the comments. I'm thinking of doing another video like this with more ideas, maybe even some of your guys' suggestions for the game. Let me know what you thought of my suggestions. Some of them were pretty good. Some of them might have been a little sillier. Some of them might have been useless. Some of them might have been downright impossible to put into the game. I'm not 100% sure. I just wanted to do this for fun, guys, and maybe just get a little bit of talking going on. So let me know what you thought in the comments. Make sure you hit that like button, of course, guys, if you did enjoy the video and would like to see more of this. And, of course, if you haven't already subscribed for Endless Scrap Mechanic, I suggest you do that. And if you don't mind me, I'm going to go for a little bit of swim. See you in the next one. Ow!